I've met through programs in the past, such as like Artist Inc. from Fresh Arts, and just to have their work in one space and see it go really well together, and just have like the ability to give the space as a platform for these artists, was more than, it's a pleasure for me. I love this. I'd like to start with PM Nice. Unfortunately, one of our participating artists could not join the talk today. But PM, can you hear me today? Can you see me?
Yes, yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. First off, I gotta just like say these works are so amazing, and and in a way they're exhausting to like look at, because I know how much time went into each and every one of these. Um, I'd like for you to tell the audience a little more about yourself and your craft, and then um, okay.
I couldn't hear you, Miles.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can. Yes. So tell about myself, my craft, and maybe this project.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. First, Miles, thank you for inviting me. You and I met through the Fresh Arts Artist Inc. program, and we hit it off because we both have a passion for
Textiles.
textiles. I know, and it's just not that many people in Houston. So, and we're not traditional quilters. So you're like my buddy that I can talk about embroidery with. So that's kind of cool. So I consider myself a visual artist, with my medium being embroidery. I call it a very patient art. I like to push the boundaries a little bit and figure out how to make things that look a little different. This particular series for me, I made it at the conclusion of the Fresh Arts program. I've had a long life spent in corporate jobs, so I'm very interested in issues related to work. And I decided to do a series on workwear, particularly work uniforms, because I think that's one area where there is a lot of, how would I say, a lot of web going on all the time. And so I'm particularly interested right now in the role of aprons. Aprons are everywhere. Like, you have baristas wearing aprons, and we're made to believe that aprons are a sign of skills and a sign of people, being like traditional artisans. And I think that is not the case, that a lot of work clothes are actually meant to disempower people as opposed to empowering them. And there's a history of that with aprons. Back in the 16th century, the top of aprons was just used up and kind of incorporated in these very expensive clothing, to where it no longer looked like an apron, and it was called a stomacher. And so I decided to make a series of aprons that are like the old stomachers, except mine kind of hang from the neck and shoulders, and each apron is embroidered with a work story, and embroidered with symbols of the kind of stuff that people have to stomach at work, which to me is very important because of what I've been doing in my life. So in short, that's what it is. And I wanted the aprons to look beautiful, to look like nothing like you can find at Starbucks, to really be things that people would maybe want to wear, in the sense that they would be seen for it. And then we kind of shot a little video of that and some photographs too. And I wanted to show kind of more diverse people there. So in a nutshell, that's what it is.
And I do have the pictures of like, what's his name? Aaron?
Aaron Fernandez, yes.
Yeah.
I know.
I saw that he wore that and I was like, oh, that's so awesome.
I know.
Yeah.
Aaron is a cool guy. We just met and hit it off, and I said, hey, would you like to model those aprons? And I think he really went with it. I also like sewed up some costumes for it. And Aaron is one of the guys that was willing to also play with gender boundaries in shooting the pictures. So it was really, plus he has this really beautiful face. So it was really playful with it, and ended up being one of my favorite models to work with. And then we also shot a video this summer, but by the time COVID was going on, so I had access to like one person to model the aprons, and that was my son's girlfriend. And I was like, okay, let's just shoot a video with those. So it's kind of been interesting to work with so many constraints right now.
Still made it happen.
Yeah.
That's the coolest part. And we'll be posting the video and like the pictures that you have of Aaron and your son's girlfriend, like on our
Mary
Instagram.
Brown.
People, yeah, can see those. Let me see. One of the artists that unfortunately wasn't able to participate in the talk was Trayvon Ladden, and they make these beautiful landscaped quilts out of sequin fabrics and upcycled fabrics. Their work, I actually would like to read their statement so that would make it easier for me. But in their work, they challenge just the execution of what a quilt can be through different uses of fabric and like, what's the word I'm looking for? Rendering, because we're so used to most quilts are just on a flat surface, but this has a lot of dimension to it, especially on the bottom part, and as well as this that has a scene of a more like pastoral land. And it's interesting because I like the use of the recycled socks on the top piece. I discovered their work through a catalog from Art League Houston. Their website is on the sidebar, and I would definitely suggest people check their work out. It's incredible. And the work that we have in this exhibition with this landscape quilts doesn't even touch the surface of all the other work, and just like the styles that this artist has. I would like to move on to Lanecia. Lanecia, can you hear me? Or can you see me?
I can.
How are you doing today?
I'm all right. Yeah, I'm here. I'm good.
I wanted to ask you more about your involvement with CERCL program at Rice, and like how's that going, and how people can also get in touch with you so far as that program.
Sure. So, again, thank you to the Community Arts Collective for having me and inviting me to be a part of this conversation. I am a visual artist, a multidisciplinary artist, mostly focusing in abstract painting and mixed media collage. And so the piece that I have offered was a part of a particular journey that I was on, where I, for the second time, got to explore quilting in a sense, of patchwork sewing and so in textiles. So that was really fun. I look forward to talking about that later. But this year I am working with Rice, CERCL at Rice, as their artist in residence. And I'm really excited. Maya and I have spoken a number of times, and as I will also talk about my work, I'm really interested in the creative process and the process that artists go through in creating their work and inviting other people into that process and how that works and unfolds for the artists, as well as inviting people into a creative process of their own and discovering the gift that creating can be. And so my project with CERCL at Rice this year will be really working collaboratively with other artists, contemporary artists here in Houston, to learn artists that I'm curious about their creative process and some visual ways, kind of creating a project that will celebrate, share their work, as well as partnering with them to create some curriculum for other people to tap into their own creativity based on their work. And so I'm really excited about that. You can find me on Instagram or email me through my website if you'd like to learn more about that work that I'm doing, and definitely follow CERCL at Rice, and you'll be able to see parts of that journey unfold later on in the spring.
Beautiful. This is not your first like textile based project. Because you had like a series of them, and what I wanted to know is like what led you to want to work with textiles in the first place after coming from more of an abstract painting background?
Sure, yeah. Well, you know, I am one who's constantly curious and moving around the world with my eyes open and kind of soaking in things. And so I think this quilt piece that I have contributed to the conversation is one that is like, came from an inspiration of years of just watching and learning and studying and engaging the work of other quilters and people, artists who have worked with textiles over the years. That when the beginning of 2019 came and there was a particular topic, I'm typically always exploring what it means. Many times the question I'm constantly asking is, what does it mean to be human? And really wanting to, I'm really interested in the memory, individual and cultural story, as well as our interior landscapes, emotional and psychological landscapes, and exploring that through my work. And when I entered into 2019, it was really evident that I needed to engage a part of my story through the art making process that I had not wanted to really touch through in my art. And when I began to envision what telling this particular part of my story needed to look like and the process I needed to go through, it was just constantly evident in just signs of life and what I was really working on in the studio, that I needed to work with fabric and photography and work on hand stitching a large quilt of sorts, if you will, that would tell, be the centerpiece for an exhibition that I was doing, exploring child loss, motherhood, and the journey through grief of that loss. And so, yeah, I'd been friends with Michelle for a while and have always kind of from a distance been watching the Community Artists Collective and the quilt work that the women and men have been doing for years here in Houston, and have been to a couple of the exhibitions for the annual exhibitions. And I'm really inspired by the Jews Ben quilters, the artist, and especially as an abstract painter. Their form, their colors, their work, it's just inspiring for me, as well as when I watch documentaries and read about them, the contemplative kind of like spiritual communal part of their process. Though my work needed to be individual, I was really drawn to how deeply kind of like spiritual and communal and connecting the quilting process was for them as I saw it. And I knew that though I was hand stitching it all by myself and going through this process, that I was still connecting me to a larger story of women who had also gone through a similar journey as I was working through in my work. And so that's a roundabout way of how I landed on doing quilting for this particular art exhibition, this piece.
And I see like in all of the pieces or photos that you've taken, which there's just, I love this piece because it really does cross a lot of different mediums all into one thing. And it just shows there are some works that if you have like a message to give with it, it shows just through the handiwork into it. It shows through the time that it took to create this. And just like even having it being hand stitched is powerful in itself is what I mean. Like that's really, really, really powerful.
Thanks. Yeah, I in 2013 had lost a child, and that was my journey through that grief is where I began to really fully live into my identity as an artist, and creativity was an important part of my healing process. And there, over the years, up to the point I did this piece, there were so many different mediums that were a part of my releasing, because we hold, our bodies hold the memory, right?
Yeah.
And that energy within us, and art has been a way for me to release various energies that my body, and stories that my body is holding. And so for this piece, I thought it was really important for me to find a way to combine all of the mediums that were a part of my healing process and journey through that grief. And photography was initially really the first art medium that I used. I would just walk around Houston looking for, in nature and in life, searching for beauty and searching for glimpses of resilience and possibility, and things that echoed in nature, like the fragility of life and the things in life that I was feeling and experiencing. I resonated a lot with the natural process of life and the cycle of life and the landscape. And so the photos that are in the piece are all from my journey through grief photography, that most of which I had not shown anyone before. And I used the cyanotype process because it is, I'm really, like I said, I love the creative process and exploring different processes. And this one in particular requires darkness, light, water, and air in order for an image to fully become. And there was something too about that kind of natural element that resonated with my particular journey. And that hand stitching, right, took time, right? And it took time. So all of those things played a role in kind of my thinking of why this particular form of expression.
And I think that's really powerful. Just like with quilting, any quilter has to be involved in the process. Like it's something that I've learned about quilting that makes me very attracted to it, because I enjoy works that you can tell that it wasn't just put on paper. Like there's a lot of time and effort and real work that real work that goes into it. It's a slow process. But as you're working on a project that requires so much of you, the outcome shows tenfold. Like you can see how much heart goes into it. This quilt here was done by our quilt master at the Community Artists Collective, that also teaches our classes from Thursday to Friday. I really enjoyed the execution of this because, again, like you can see the process of how much work went into this. I will have to definitely post more detailed photos because like this section right here is all hand stitched and it's utilizing the smallest of fabrics. And even when it comes down to like the meandering of the quilt, when they basically secure it to all 3 layers, most of this quilt was meandered by hand, by like a handheld, a domestic machine. The only parts that were actually utilized with a quilting machine were these golden spots, but all of the black inside, Leslie was actually maneuvering the sewing machine and the quilt, or the quilt with her hands. And when it comes to work like this, that takes time and shows that it takes time. For me personally, I get the satisfaction of that because as a textile based artist and like a person that creates clothing, and I guess I can share my, let me stop screen sharing for a second so people can see my mug for a quick second. Start video. So as a person that likes working with textile myself, there's an appreciation when I look at work such as Lanecia's and Patricia's and Leslie's PM, because I know, like, I can equate the work that I've done to the work that y'all have done, and I'm like, wow, this was not an overnight project. Like, there was a lot of time and dedication and thought process that went into this. And when I see work like that, my brain is just like, I know. I mean, I'm not making a quote, but I understand how much heart goes into it. The next quote I'm gonna show, and I'll have Patricia speak about it, is Queen of Nines. Let me go back to screen share real quick. Awesome. Oh, hold on. Share screen. Screen share. Cool. Awesome. Can you see me, Patricia? Can you hear me?
I hear you. I see you. I see everybody.
Awesome. Could you introduce yourself to the audience and just a little bit about what you do in the community so far as quilting?
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm glad you showed up to participate with our arts event today. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Miles, for inviting me and letting me have the opportunity to exhibit this quilt that I started in March and I finished it in March. When we first went on lockdown, that's when I was so used to going and doing stuff, and then they said, well, stay at home. Well, I have to do something while I'm staying at home. So this is what I chose to do. But I have been quilting for about, I would say off and on for about 20 years now. And I am currently a member of the Aldine Area Quilt Guild, where there's about maybe 30 of us that normally would quilt on a Wednesday night, but we haven't seen each other on quilting since like March, the second week in March when everything went on lockdown. I started quilting as just really something to do because I liked it. and I wanted to do more of it. I wanted to really get into it. And when I first started, I was telling Miles about my first quilt because it was a hot mess. And it wasn't straight, the sewing was off and everything. And then I learned the basics of quilting. And as I did, when I was at my quilting guild, it dawned on me because they would always say, well, if you need help, ask for it. And that's what I did. And one day I said, I need some help. And everybody stopped what they were doing and they came over to help me with my problem and solve it. And it was like, it hit me then. It's called a quilting bee. And that's what bees do. They, when you're in trouble, they come and help you and they're in a swarm like, and then when they get you where you need to be, then they go on about their business. And it just kind of, it was like mind blowing at that time. And then I learned, how to do a straight stitch. We normally do a 1/4 inch. Then we have rules. We don't cut anymore, and we can use anything we want to. And I just kind of started, being involved with that. And right now, well, I had been the photographer for the group, the historian, and then I planned the bus trips I used to plan the bus trips for them because we'd go on a bus trip every month to a quilt guild or a quilt shop or a quilt exhibit. And we do this to get you away from, really the confounds of a building to just quilt. We go out and we do things and we go and eat and we have conversations and get familiar with each other because we are a family. And we did that for years. And I resigned from that last year because I had taken on some more duties as arts and craft instructor for Precinct 1 under Rodney Ellis. Mm-hmm. And I've been doing it with them for since maybe September of last year, if I make no mistake. So that's where I am right now with the arts and crafts. And I do have a Zoom class on Tuesdays showing arts and craft and teaching people how to do simple arts and crafts.
Do you have, after the talk, is there a link or some way that people can get in touch with that?
Sure, I'll put it in the chat.
Awesome, thank you so much. I'd like to know a little bit more about this quilt. It's really beautiful. It's definitely multimedia, and there's such a utilization of many different just fabrics, textures, all going on to this one quilt. And the last and first time I spoke to you in person, I like how you had mentioned you added a mask to one of the ladies as COVID was going on.
Yes. This quilt started, I was showing some of the ladies in my class, we were going to do a 9-patch. I was trying to see where they were in quilting. So I said, well, let's do a simple 9-patch. And I had to show them how to do it. Well, and I only really work with African prints, animal prints, and petites. So I did a 9-patch and I showed them how to do it and how it's supposed to look. And they did, some of them did pillows, some did throws, and some did full-blown king-size quilts. And I said, well, okay, let's do this. And then it kind of evolved. I did one square, and then I did another and another, and it just became a quilt, a large quilt. And it's called Dress to the 9 because it is a 9-patch quilt. If you look at the squares, there are 9 squares in each square. I put it like that. And in every other frame or every other square, there's a lady in it, and it's her from the neck up. And it's really a headshot or her crown that I emphasized on. And each one of them has a different story behind her. And some of them it's made out of cork. It's made out of jewelry, beads, lace, straw, all kind of cotton, lace, all kind of different trims. And with each one's story, it's a different head shot or head instrument to what the lady or what a lady or what a queen would do. And that's my perspective of what a Black woman is. She is a queen. And I just kind of played with it a little bit. And like the first one, the first square, Miles, can you enlarge that?
I'm not sure if I can, but what I can do is, let me see, laptop, and this is why I'm in the space.
And we can just do a couple of them, so
Yeah.
when they come to the studio, they can look at all of it and really see. Okay, there you go. Now that first one, the first lady, okay, and she's saying, will you fall for me, even if I'm a little nutty? I'm full, I'm bare, I flourish, I fall. I'm in the same, and I'm different. I proceed, I recede. I'm green, I'm gold, I'm brown. I have roots that grow deep down in my soul. I've been in a storm, the wind, the rain, the sun, but I came out victorious through it all. I'm a survivor. Now, if you look there, she has leaves for hair. And it's autumn leaves like brown and gold and orange. And she has acorns all around her. And then she has acorns for her earrings. And she's saying, will you fall for me, even though I'm a little nutty?
Good play
Okay.
on words.
And
I was really interested in this money queen. I'm assuming like to bring wealth upon someone. Like I just love this quote because it's very playful. It's like it's something I can stare at and still like see something new in it every time.
Now this one right here that you're looking at now, that is currency for hair. We had gone to the Treasury Department, and when you go, they give you a little currency, a little tube of currency. And that one states, I got my mind on my money and my money on my mind. I knew how much money I had, but I don't know where it went. Sometimes it flies away from me. Really? I know I had a $20 bill yesterday, but it turned into a $5 overnight. What's up with that? Oh yeah, now I remember. I went to the store and got some lottery tickets yesterday. So that's where my money went. Now that one, and then she has some fake dollar bills on the side, and let me see, and some butterflies because her money has flown away.
And I was also wondering where do you source all these fabrics that you have? Because I remember speaking with you, and you had mentioned that when you first started utilizing African fabrics, it was actually from the clothes that you made. But
yeah.
So far as like this quote, where do you already know what you want to buy, or like are these quilts that have been passed down to you? Or I'm just always curious on how like a quilter selects the fabrics that they want to use.
Well, it's called a friend of mine who's probably on here now, Miss Jewel. I tell her all the time I'm a borderline hoarder, and she says I'm not.
Any textile businesses.
Whenever I see something that I like, I go on and get it because I'll use it later on regardless, even if it's maybe making table runners or coasters or mug rugs, because I like the fabric and I'll utilize it. And a lot of times people know what I like, and if they see it, they'll buy it for me. And different textiles, a friend of mine, she had this loads of stuff, all kind of leftovers from samples from hotels and things like that, because she used to work at Landry's. And she said, well, look, they're going to throw this stuff away, take it to your quilt guild. And that's what I did. And they made quilts out of it. So we get it from different areas. People know you do it. They give it to you. They buy it for you, and they give it to you. And you know, that's what we do.
There is one other thing that I actually wanted to ask all the participating artists in this, because it's a question that's been on my mind for a while as a person that works with textile. There seems to be in a lot of people's minds like the separation from craft and art, or like craft and fine art, if you want to say that. And the pieces that you have, like there's in this show in Hearts, Hands, and Heritage, I wanted to create a space in which there are, for lack of better words, more like contemporary styled quilts paired with traditional style quilts. And we have, the thing about it is that like a traditional style quilt is still art. But I wanted to know in your minds, like what is the distinction from craft? When does craft become the art for you guys? I know that's a tough one because I'm still trying to break that one down in my head too, but
Miles, I mean, I saw this interesting definition for me that craft is something that's repeated or repeatable. So, you know, if you have something that, you know, like, okay, you take the 9 patch, right? I mean, the pattern itself is repeatable in its craft, fine. And you learn that. But then I think eventually it becomes art because this quilt is completely unique, right? There's absolutely no way that this combination could have been made, right? And it's art because even though the pattern is craft, the combination, the extraordinary creativity to me makes it art. And I think that as long as we come with original pieces, it's art. And I think also that there's a lot of people poo-pooing the fact that it's sewing, right? So anything with the needle comes from women. We're not going to talk about that, yada, yada, yada. Forget it. To me, it's art.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I think that is a massive part of this like pseudo distinction of craft. And it's strange to me because it's like historically, like some countries did, it's just weird how we associate some things with femininity, and sewing is not. It's a skill. It's a universal skill. It's a universal skill, first off. And like when you start getting into quilting and even like, what's the word I'm looking for? Tapestries. Mm-hmm. So I learned along, like in some countries, in Arabic countries actually, women were not allowed to touch the tapestries. Mostly men were working on these massive, the tapestries that like you can see at the biennial, and they're more like historic section. No women were touching those. There were artisans, groups of artisan men that would be working on these tapestries and quilts. And so it's strange how we fast forward like centuries later and then we equate that to, oh, this is just for women sewing. But like it has been historically passed down through both men and women. And like I don't know. Sometimes I just wonder where that comes from. It's just interesting. It's more interesting because like as a male textile artist making clothes, like I don't understand the distinction of femininity and masculinity within a craft when there needs to be none. I wanted to know that same question, like how, like Patricia, when you look at a quilt is art to you, like off the bat. Like how do you feel about like a quilt being considered anything less than art?
Well, it has to be a mind thing, first of all, and you have to have a knowledge of a background. Whenever I'm at the quilt show every year, every year I'm at the quilt show. And you go and you look and you try to see in a person's mind, how did they come up with that? And it's not but one that's like that, and every one is different from the other, where he went to the left side of the brain or the right side, or what he was smoking or drinking when they did this, because they're beautiful, they're unique, and I consider it used to quilting may have been a craft at one time. You know, and they will, you know, stapled out, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2. I mean, and everything was the same. Now nothing is the same. Everything is different, and they go through different techniques and different mind frames, and it's always been art to me, always.
I love that. And I'd like to ask, naturally, I'd like to ask you how you feel about like the separation between craft and art. Because even like in the quilter community, some pieces of work aren't always considered like quilts. Like the work that you have, in my mind, that is a quilt, but like from a traditionalist sense, they may look at this and say like this is a patchwork piece. It's just strange. Like, I guess I wanted to know how you feel about yourself being in the textile art community, because you are now. As soon as you made that piece, like you are in a family of people that work with textiles. It only takes one. It only takes one piece, and then you're a part of it. And I'd also like to, two things before I get ahead of myself. Like I would like to know like your distinctions between craft and art, and then I'd also like to know if you ever plan on doing more with this like textile based work, because like I know at Project Row Houses, it was more of like a collage setting and not super focused on textile. But I love that you keep, I don't know, like you don't stay in a box. And I'm like, man, that's wild. What are you gonna do next?
I feel like there's so many different parts of myself that art creates a space for me to explore. And so it's all going to come out in different ways. And I try to embrace the freedom that is mine to do that. And so, yeah, I have made other pieces. I did a commission for a restaurant in town where I did the Cyanotype fabric hand stitch work. Yeah, and I've done some smaller ones as well for an exhibition with the Cyanotype and rust dyeing. I love how fabric can be manipulated in ways that my canvas cannot and wood surfaces cannot. There's kind of like limitless possibilities with that. I really am drawn to that process of and the storytelling potential of it. And I didn't mention, but in that particular piece and other pieces I've done, poetry has been an important part, and I kind of call them visual poetry pieces. And really kind of like improvisation. I'm really drawn to crazy quilting, which kind of makes sense of just like having these fragments and piecing them together, which is why I also love collage. You know, so they all for me just kind of weave together really nicely, and I can see the thread of the different art things that I produce or create and offer to the world. But yeah, I do. I plan on it. I initially, my first one actually was canvas quilt that I did during my residency in Paris in 2018, where I painted 3 paintings on canvas, cut and ripped them up, and then hand stitched them all together to create this piece for the space where I was at the American Church in Paris when I was there. And that's when I really embraced, like, as an artist, I am free to really create whatever the work demands of me. And I was like, I love this process, this repetitive process of stitching and piecing these fragments together to reconstitute them to become this new thing, right? And So yeah, I plan on doing that with my Project Row installation. Though it wasn't quilting per se or patchwork, there was definitely, I did on loose canvas, and I had a lot of stitching involved. Huh?
It was stained with like coffee or?
Yeah, it was stained with coffee and charcoal, and it was some printing that I did on the canvas with the coffee and the charcoal and the dirt. And then I did threading and stitching of the paper onto the canvas. And so it wasn't necessarily even traditional collaging in that sense, but the threading is just this constant thing now. That
It's meditative.
Yeah, and the stitching. And so, and then to go back to your first part of the question, when you invited me, it did take me a minute to say yes. One, because I just have such a deep respect for the craft and the art form of quilting, and an admiration for the women and men who've been doing this for generations, and who create such beautiful pieces that I was just kind of like, oh wow, that I would be invited to be a part of that was definitely an honor. And so thank you for that and seeing my work as such. It is, someone may look at it and say that it's patchwork. There was a particular reason why I didn't fully quilt it in the traditional sense. And it had just to do with the theme of grief being this ongoing process. And so I wasn't ready to finish it. I mean, a year from now, I may add more to it. And at some point I may be ready to quilt it in the technical sense of the word. But that's why I chose to kind of leave it, not traditionally quilted, but to leave space for additions to be added as needed. So
I see that too, because like on the edges,
mm-hmm.
some of the pieces are literally like kind of tilting off.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to say thank all of y'all for participating in the show. I'm excited to see all the work that you do in the future, but you, PM Neist, and now that I know about Patricia and this quilt is so wild. As soon as I like saw it in person, I was like, oh yes, I love this. I'd like to leave the, I guess like last 7-10 minutes up open for Q&A. So if anybody has questions on the chat, I'm gonna mute myself, and you feel free to open your camera if you'd like, or if you have any questions, you can put them into the chat room. Oh, and again, like for real, thank all of y'all for being in. This is really cool.
I am supposed to put something in the chat for what it was.
Let me mute myself. Did you want to say anything in closing, Maya, by the way? We didn't forget about you.
Unmute.
Oh yeah, hold on. Ask down here. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
No,
You couldn't hear me. Yeah, I was muted. No, I've just been sitting here enjoying what everyone had to say about their art. I mean, it's really exciting to hear and see what everyone's done. We can't wait to get into the space and see them in person.
Yeah, that's so wild. Like I've talked to you over the phone, but I have not, like, this is my first time seeing you.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
Doesn't seem like there's too many questions, so I'd like to take the time to say have a good weekend. Hope all of y'all do well, and thanks all for stopping by and talking with me today.
Thanks, Miles.
Thank you, Miles.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Maya.
Thank you.
Michelle.
Yeah.
Oh,
Bye.
yeah. Such a pleasure to be with all of you.
It was very nice. Thank you.